NRCS and other organizations. Just before to start, my name is Ayman Mustafa. I am the area extension agent here for urban agriculture production, small scale and beginning farmer programs. And today's event about the Urban Ag Hour will have two speakers. We'll start first with Dr. Ed Martin. Dr. Ed Martin is the interim director of Cooperative Extension. And he is a professor and extension specialist of irrigation at the Department of Biosystem Engineering. And he will talk with us today about some aspect of irrigation in urban agriculture on small scale. Ed, it's all yours now.
All right, thank you, Ayman. You can all hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, let me get to sharing my screen and hopefully we'll get the right screen. Hold on, share this one and go back one. There we go. So you see that?
Yes.
All right. So yes, as Ayman said, my name is Ed Martin. I'm the interim director for Cooperative Extension, but in my previous life, I was the state irrigation specialist. And I'm also a professor and irrigation specialist with the Biosystems Engineering Department on campus. So Colleen, how many minutes do I have?
So you have 20 minutes for talk and 10 minutes for discussion.
Okay, so this is going to be at warp speed, folks, because I've got a whole lot to cover. But I'm just going to give you a little background on irrigation considerations and things that I talk to when I do my presentations to beginning farmers and small scale farming. Try to give them some background for on irrigation systems, things that they need to be aware of, crop water use and things like that. So we'll cover the water supply pressure considerations, which people really need to get a hold of and understand. We'll talk about crop water use. We'll talk about determining how much water you're really applying, and then talk about some general considerations for irrigation systems themselves. A good rule of thumb, and I think Colleen will make this available to everyone. You need 10 gallons per minute for every acre you want to irrigate. You probably could get away with 8, but when I have people call me and say they've got a pump and it's pumping 40 gallons a minute and they want to do 8 acres, well, that 40 gallon per minute pump, which is a small little pump, it's not huge, but that's about 4 acres worth, maybe 5. I always use 10 gallons per minute. This basically is so that whatever crop you're growing, if you decide to grow sweet corn or something like that, and you're using, 0.25, 0.3 inches of water per day, you're actually going to be able to finish irrigation in a timely manner, and you won't have to irrigate for 24 hours. So a good rule of thumb that people need to understand before they start anything when it comes to production agriculture is that you need 10 gallons per minute for every acre. And if you don't have that, then you need to figure out how to do that. I have so many people who come to me with these grandiose ideas and they just don't even have the available water availability. And I think all of us understand water availability is only going to get harder. I know this is simple, but I always tell people, remember, water passing through a pipe or when it runs uphill, there's a pressure loss. So if you're pumping uphill and you think you got 35 PSI at the pump and you're putting it through some pipe, you're not going to have 30 PSI at the end of that. So whatever your irrigation system may require, you've got to consider that. And also water runs downhill and there's pressure gain when you run downhill. I actually worked with some folks up on the Navajo Nation who had a large 8-inch pipe that they were bringing off of a river or a canal actually that they had, and it ran downhill. And the first time they turned it on, it just blew the whole end of it off because the pressure at the bottom of that hill, and there must have been probably a 20-foot drop, was just off the charts. So even for people that are using surface irrigation, it's also something to remember. I've had people tell me that they can't get water to their pasture. They got a couple acres and that back right corner just never seems to get watered enough. And Sure enough, you go out there and do a elevation check and find out it's, about 3 inches higher than the rest of the field. And that's why it's not getting any. And then also when water turns, when it goes through a valve, when it goes through a connector, all of those things, there's pressure loss. This is a chart I like to show folks. This is PVC. A lot of people that are working in small acreage and urban use PVC to run their water through. The areas in gray are when you're getting too much flow through your pipe. So you can see, for instance, in this case, a 1-inch PVC, you should be about 12 gallons per minute maximum. If you go above 12 gallons per minute, as you can see, your velocity goes above 5. Anytime your velocity in feet per second is above 5, you can get what's called a water hammer. You all might have experienced this in your homes. I know that I have a slight water hammer in my house with my backyard, at least I used to, when I had a backyard full of grass. And when that system turned on, I could hear the pipe hit the side of the wall, and that's the water hammer. That means that, boom, you're putting too much pressure through that small little pipe. And so I know in my backyard, I have 1-inch line going through my entire house and in my irrigation system, and I was at about 15 gallons per minute that it was putting out. So that's called the water hammer. It also happens when it turns off and on. I hear it turn off, I hear it turn on. Back in Michigan, where I grew up, we had basements and we had pipe that were in the ceilings. I could hear the water hammer. Most people don't think it's a big deal, and probably for the most part, it's not, except when it's a problem. Right? And you can get cracks like this, and it's just amazing what it does. It might not affect your system right off the bat, but sooner or later it's going to break. It's going to cause a problem. So we always go back to this chart and making sure that, and this is all available online, making sure you're putting the right amount of water through the size of pipe that you have. Also, remember, every time you go through one of these, you could cause a water hammer every time you make a turn. And these things are all glued together or screwed together, and sooner or later, that water hammer will have its effect, and you'll find some breaks along the way. Water use, it's different for every crop, right? If you're growing corn or if you're growing some hay or vegetables, every crop has a different water use curve. This is kind of a general curve, right? And so basically this is growing degree days or days, right? This is basically as the temperature increases and the plant grows, continues to grow, it starts using more and more water, it'll reach some sort of a peak, and then it will start to come down. For some of the crops, this peak is happening at different times. Here's one where it actually goes a little bit slower up, and then it hits the peak and crashes back down. There's curves for just about every one of the crops, and there's a place that you can go and check it out. I've got to be honest, the data is old, but plants haven't really stopped using this water. They use it in the same format or the same general curve that they did 10, 15 years ago. This is an old one. This is cauliflower, and you can see as planting in September, there's 4-inch, you get the 12-inch cauliflower. Seasonal use is about 18 inches, but you're probably harvesting your cauliflower somewhere around here at 12 inches, right? We're not going to let cauliflower grow, because if you go all the way to January, it goes to seed. So you're going to be actually harvesting a lot earlier. Here's dry onions, right? This is that one that it starts off really slow and then it starts picking up as the onions begins. If you want small bulbs, you'd harvest it here, larger bulbs. And once again, you get to some point where on crops like this, you'll just, you'll be harvesting up here. You don't let the onions go to seed. Here's green onions, a little bit different. They all have a seasonal crop water use. Grapefruit uses water year round. It gets up to about 0.23 inches per day. But even during the winter right now, it's still using a little bit of water. And most trees do throughout the entire year. So here just a little chart talking about different things that we can grow in Arizona: oranges and cantaloupes, and carrots and cauliflower and head lettuce. These are the peak, and this is really what you're going to design for, the peak water use, and this is the seasonal. So you got to make sure you have enough water to get it through the season, but this is really the one that's going to take up your, or going to determine your irrigation type. You've got to be able to, if you're growing Bermuda grass in Arizona for production, most of us aren't growing for production, 0.35 inches per day. So you've got to be able to supply that. Spring cantaloupe, you're up to 0.4 inches per day. So you've got to make sure you can put that much water on in a single day, given your irrigation system. Does variety really have an effect? Usually I engage people with this question. I won't do that here, but I'll tell you now, not a whole lot. The variety of oranges will, obviously the difference between a grapefruit and an orange, yes, but oranges are oranges, really won't have a big effect. Same thing with lettuce, green lettuce, purple lettuce, lettuce is lettuce. Head lettuce will be different than the leaf lettuce, yes. But, there's different varieties within. I'm thinking right now, cauliflower, there's one called Snow White and there's one called Snowball, and they have all different kinds of names. For the most part, they're going to use the same amount of water. There might be some difference in how they are affected by drought and things like that. There are some plants and some varieties now that are more drought tolerant, which means they won't die as quickly. They can survive a little bit more. But it doesn't mean that the plant actually, wants less water or can live on or uses less water. It can just live on less water. You'll actually probably get a decrease in yield if you go into drought, but at least it won't die. But for the most part, these differences are very minor. Nutrient management's a big part of irrigation, believe it or not. Sick plants use less water. If you've got some sick plants out there or plants that aren't as healthy, they don't use as much water and you end up getting ponding and stuff like that. And I've seen that as well, where people say, yeah, I don't know what's wrong. My plants aren't looking good. I've got water sitting around. Well, it's actually a problem with some disease or something. The irrigation system, does the irrigation system determine how much water a plant will use? The answer on that is no. The irrigation system will determine how much water you apply, but not how much that plant will use. So a cotton plant, lettuce that's grown on drip will use the same amount of water as lettuce that's grown in surface irrigation. The difference is surface irrigation will put a lot more water on it because it's less efficient. Doesn't have anything to do with the plant itself. So that's the big difference. It won't affect how much water the plant uses, it affects how much water you apply. So if you have a drip or if you have a center pivot or if you're doing a surface, yeah, that will definitely have an impact, and it impacts the efficiency of the system. So this is some efficiencies that we use, round numbers. Surface flood, 60 to 80% seasonally. Peak use, flood puts on a lot of water at one time, but if your crop is using a lot of water when it's at the height of water use, your efficiency can actually go up. Sprinkler, 75 to 85. Some sprinklers even higher than that now that they've got these drop nozzles and all of that. Drip is 85 to 90. To be quite honest, it should probably be 90 plus if it's not. So what does it mean in practical sense? Well, let's look at that chart again. So if we look at, I don't know, broccoli uses 0.2 inches per day. With 90% efficiency, you'd have to apply 0.22 to make sure that the entire crop saw at least 0.2 inches per day. If it was 80% efficient, you'd have to at least apply 1/4 of an inch. And if 70% efficient, almost 1/3 of an inch. That's where the big difference is. So when people ask me, if I put in a drip system, my plant will be more efficient using water. Well, not really. That's not your plant. Your system is more efficient in applying the water. Applies it only where the plant needs it. If you're sprinkling, you're going to have wind drift and things like that occurring. And so there could be some problems. You're also irrigating the entire field instead of just irrigating where the plants are. If you're surface irrigating, you're irrigating obviously quite a bit of the field, the entire field. So those furrows are getting irrigated where we have no plants. That is also a waste of water. How much water was applied? There's a thing, and this is a good one. This is called the irrigator's equation. and I'm an engineer, so obviously there's going to be math involved. So this is the irrigator's equation. QT equals dA. And as you all know, if you know any three, you can figure out number 4. So if I know my flow rate, I know the depth of inches I want to apply, I know the area, I can figure out how long I need to run my system for. Or if I ran my system for an hour and I knew the flow rate in the area, I can figure out how much I actually applied. So we can look at something small like a 50 by 50 sprinkler irrigation, let's say 20 gallons per minute. How long does it take to put on a 1/2 inch of water? So if I want to do a 1/2 inch of water, QT equals dA. So Q is 20 gallons per minute, divide that by 450 times time. We don't know, that's what we're trying to figure out. That equals 0.5, that was how long or how many inches we want to apply, and then the area, 50 by 50, and then divide it by 43,560, which is to get it into acres. And you do the calculations, and basically it would take you about 40 minutes. So I teach people this. This is really easy. This works for drip. This works for anything. That's how much water your system is applying. So that's what you need to understand. Some people would say with drip, you might be able to actually use, cut that back a bit because you're not irrigating the entire 50 by 50 acre or area. You're only irrigating a smaller amount. You could figure out if you wanted to what the area is of the beds that are actually getting wet. And so you could reduce that. But this is a great one. This gets 2 thumbs up. This is so easy that you could do this. It's called the irrigator's equation. Once again, it's available online. You can read it. This is actually, it actually is set up QT equals dA with the Q being in cubic feet per second. It's actually for large irrigation systems, but this is a conversion so that people who are on smaller systems using pumps with gallons per minute instead of cubic feet per second would use. And then the systems themselves, right? Surface irrigation systems is pretty much what we use in here in Arizona. There's some sprinkler and drip. When you get to the smaller irrigations, especially in an urban area, I've seen stuff out in Queen Creek that's still surface irrigated because they still have that available to them. I've seen folks put out sprinklers, and then of course there's drip too. So this is the surface irrigation that people normally use. This is a big field, but once again, it's not all that different. I was working with some folks out on Thomas. It was the International Rescue Group Committee was out there, and they actually were still on surface water out there. And so you can grow some beautiful crops. There's no doubt about it. You can have some alternatives. You don't need to be running, the large irrigation systems. You can use this flexible tubing. Works out really nice. You can kind of see these 2 people here. They're basically just poking holes in this tube. And then when you get to the end, you've got something like this. So this is a great alternative. It's available. This tubing, this poly tubing lasts for an entire season. And actually, if you take care of it, can last for a couple of seasons. And it's a good way if you're working off of a system that's putting out quite a bit of water, working off an alfalfa valve or something like that from SRP, you can hook up to this and you can use this on surface systems. It does also come in aluminum, and this is from my older days when I used to actually work for a living instead of being an administrator. And we were growing some cauliflower, and we grew some beautiful cauliflower just on, I think it was a 50-foot run on that one. So it does work out very, very well. Nice thing about surface systems, low cost, but also they're not very efficient, right? Surface system can put on, for the most part, maybe 3 inches of water at a single time to make sure it gets to all the field. And when your plants are very small, well, 3 inches of water is not really what it needs. And so you're probably over irrigating. They do usually require a lot of labor because things are breaking over and you've got to be out there with the shovel and make sure that you're keeping the water contained. The nice thing is it's low water quality requirement. Most surface systems, and you can see this one here, these actually have some pretty good sized gates on them, as we call it. You can put a lot of trash through that. You don't need to worry about the water quality. But you've got to be careful of elevation. Once again, surface systems are only as good as your field elevation is. water will run downhill and it won't run uphill. So people need to be aware of that. Sounds like it would be quick and easy, but I've had many, many groups that just, are struggling with this concept of it won't run uphill. It's not going to get up there. Sprinkler systems, we've got center pivots and linear moves and big guns and all the solid sets. The center pivot systems, those are the ones that go round and round, make the big circles when you're flying over Nebraska that you see. They come in all different sizes, folks. And, someone might just set up a single center pivot in their field, and, that's their farm, and that's what they're going to be irrigating with. Here's just a little baby one here, right? I mean, there's all different sizes that people do, and they do it for pasture and different things like that. They work out very nice. Center pivots are kind of cool because you don't really require a whole lot. It's always the last tower here that actually runs. Every other tower in between, and ones like this, the towers that are in between are just following. That's all they're doing. The linear moves basically just move across the field linearly. Here's one that's pumping out of a ditch, and it just moves across the field. These are work just as well as the center pivots, though there's a little bit more mechanics involved and a little more issues with getting the water up. So that's a little bit of a problem. Oh, did I go the wrong way? Oh, and then there's center or solid sets, right? These are the sprinklers, and this is used prevalently especially in urban areas where we have pressure. People put out these sprinkler systems and they irrigate their crop. They work very well. Not very highly efficient, but efficient enough. And if you've got pressure and you've got enough water, they can work out good for you. And then there's big guns. You can actually just set out a gun like this with a big sprinkler head on it, and it will irrigate the field for you. The big guns aren't as good as the sprinkler solid set systems because the uniformity is not as well, but certainly something that people could do. I've had a lot of folks tell me, well, I've got this giant sprinkler, I'm going to do a little pasture, so I'm just going to set the sprinkler in the center and do the whole thing. Yeah, that's fine, but trust me, that uniformity, it will take quite a bit to make sure that whole field sees exactly the same amount of water. And here's another one, another giant big gun. There you go. So they're used, mostly I've seen them used back east. I haven't seen a whole lot of this being done here in Arizona. It seems like everyone goes with the solid set for that. Sprinkler systems overall, moderate cost, pretty efficient. Do require some labor unless you got enough money where you can actually have it out there and just leave it there. For the most part, people usually kind of move it around. Water quality, well, now we have sprinklers, so they do have a little bit of a challenge because of the sprinkler head. You could get clogged up, but don't require a whole lot of filtration or water quality, but does require pressure, right? So now we've introduced pressure. So you're going to have some sort of a pump where before you might have just opened up a alfalfa valve and flooded your field. Now you got to have a pump because you're going to have to run pressure through. And then finally, drip. Most of what we use in Arizona is buried drip, but all of this could be also done right on the surface. Buried drip, usually we put it in the center of the bed, bury it anywhere between 6 to 10 inches below the ground. They have machines that you can go out and get this stuff buried in. You can see here, this is the drip tape and it's going under the ground. So then you just plant over it. This is the irrigation. You can see it coming through. And basically the drip tape that's used for this is considered to be like a line source. And so you can see you can plant anywhere along this line. And the results here, you can see it's just below. You always do it with the emitters facing up, because if you have it with the emitters facing down, when you turn the system off, any debris that is in the water will actually settle to the bottom of the tape and would clog up your emitters. If you were on the surface, you could put this on the surface and you could do the same thing and it would work just as well, probably. The only problem is you'd have to worry about, running it over, getting it nicked when you harvest, etc. But a lot of urban folks definitely do that. And then at the end of the season, pick it up so they can till the soil and all. You can inject chemicals into your tape. So you could inject your fertilizer, or if you needed to inject some sort of herbicide or something, all of that can be done. You can even alter the pH so that you could alter the pH of the soil around the tape, which could help with the plant growth. And the other thing is, though, that you have to filter the water. The water must be very clean. Those little emitters get clogged very easily. And trust me, you won't know it until it's a problem. So especially if you got a good sized field, by the time you realize you're not putting enough water out there, you start to see your plants looking smaller, and then you realize that you got a problem. The other issue too is that some people go a little overboard and make it a plumber's nightmare, as I call it, and do all kinds of stuff. That's fine. It makes it a little difficult to figure out exactly what's going on here, but probably is working for them. The other thing to consider too with drip tape, maybe not so much in urban areas, though, our urban areas are, formerly rural areas in many cases, is rodents. We have a lot of problems with rodents chewing on the drip tape. And once again, if it's just a small hole, you might not find it for many days. If it's a large leak, yeah, you'll come in one morning and you'll have a little leak, a little lake in the middle of your field, because the rodents will just chew right through it. But in the end, you can have some beautiful, once again, beautiful crops. This is all buried drip lines. As a matter of fact, I think we put 2 drip lines on this one, a 50-foot run once again, and it just worked out beautifully for us. And there's one with just a single line going through. So it's definitely possible. You're only irrigating right below the plant. You minimize the need for weeding and other things. If we don't get any rain, you don't have to worry about something growing in between the crops or competing with it. You can use it on orchards and things like that. So it's very adaptable to all different types of crops that you might want to grow. Comparatively, drip systems can be high cost, though I got to be honest with you, it's coming down. Sprinkler World and all those others, the cost is not all as high as it used to be. Extremely efficient. Like I said, you're looking at 90% plus. For the water you applied, it's getting used by the crop, and you're not watering any weeds, and you're not, drying or dehumidifying or humidifying the air with the spray. You're just dripping it right there. Little labor once you get it up and you set up. The biggest thing, if there might be labor for injection, and you probably have to have someone walk the field every once in a while to make sure that the system's still working. But you can put in flow meters and pressure meters, and they'll tell you that the flow's working. That means you don't have any breaks or pressure. If the pressure starts going up, that means you're getting plugging. So there's different ways of doing it. It does require high quality water. So if you're coming off of city water, I would use drip just because it's already clean, and it does require some pressure. Yeah, but once again, that pressure is dropping. They've got systems that use 20, 15 PSI. So you have to be cautious of this. Once again, like other systems, if your field's too big and you're starting off with 20 PSI, as I told you, as it goes through these drip tapes, as it goes through pipe, you lose pressure, and you get to the end of your field out there in the far right corner or left corner, and you're down to 8 PSI. Yeah, it'll still drip, but it's not dripping at the amount that it should be dripping. So I'm going to go back to this because I really think this is where we start. How much water do you have available? That's the first question I ask any grower who says, I want to, I want to grow tomatoes. Okay, how much water do you have? And how much pressure do you have? And most people don't have a clue. And you can check water, gallons per minute, get a 5-gallon drum out there, turn on your pump and see how fast it takes to fill up 5 gallons and multiply it out. That's a little bit of math, but you can do it. And then for pressure, you can always put a pressure gauge on just about any pump and find out what the pressure is coming out of that. And that will help you determine what you can grow, how much you can grow, and how big of a system you can have. So that would be my one takeaway, 10 gallons per minute for every acre. You got that? Okay, now we can start talking about what you want to grow and what you want to put in.
Well, thank you so much.
That's
Ed.
all I got.
We are a little bit over time, but I do have two quick questions in the chat for you, and then we'll consolidate most questions at the end, folks. So keep your questions for Ed in mind, and we'll have time at the end here. But two questions that came in through the chat. One from Martha was asking if there are resources for edible flowers water use that you know of.
Not that I know of, though I would imagine probably our master gardeners or horticulture folks probably have stuff for flowers. So I don't know of any, but I'll bet you there's something out there.
And Martha, I can follow up with you and do some digging on that. Gabrielle also asked where the polytubing for surface systems you pictured are sold.
I just find it online. There used to be a place, and I don't even know if it's Arizona Bag. Used to have it, believe it or not. And so there are places online where you can purchase that tubing, and they have the tools too, so you can punch the holes in it and all of that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ed. And like I said, at the end, if you have questions for Ed, please let us know. And Ed, I'm gonna have you stop sharing screen.
Okay, I'm gonna try. Here we go.
Excellent. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Paul Cattelino, who is the State Outreach Coordinator for Arizona NRCS. Paul will be doing a brief overview of NRCS's conservation mission, as well as the available programs and services. So take it away, Paul.
Hey, thank you, Colleen and Iman, and thank you, Ed, for that amazing, informative presentation. And thank you for having me here today. So as Colleen said, I am the State Outreach Coordinator for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which I'm going to call NRCS through the remainder of this presentation. And I am also going to go to warp speed for this presentation and skip through the slides. I've got a lot of information to condense with a big government agency down to 20 minutes, so I'll try to make it quick. What I would like for you to take away from this first slide is my email and my telephone number, because NRCS is a conservation agency under USDA, and many of the irrigation practices that Ed talked about in his presentation, our soil conservationists and our engineers can assist farmers and ranchers with. So we have programs that provide both technical assistance and financial assistance that can help pay for a lot of those practices that Ed discussed. So again, just quickly, today's presentation is, oh, excuse me, I was on the wrong slide, sorry. Getting used to Zoom here. We often work in Microsoft Teams. All right, so the goal for today's presentation, NRCS has partnered with Cooperative Extension to support beginning, small scale, and urban farmers across Arizona. And this series, of course, is designed to highlight the wide range of programs and services that may be available from expert agencies like Cooperative Extension and the USDA umbrella that NRCS lives under. So what I would like for you to do is go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and we'll try and get to them at the end. If you have very specific program questions, such as questions about your program eligibility or your specific farming operations, I will have to connect you with an NRCS expert offline to get you the best help for your specific needs. So I mentioned that NRCS is under the USDA umbrella. We are one of 29 USDA agencies and offices. And what are we? So we're a nationwide conservation agency, but our focus is on working locally to find solutions to local conservation issues. Our experts work with farmers, ranchers, forest landowners, and more participants to find ways to get conservation onto working agricultural lands. Now, we try and do this in a way that makes economic sense for the participants, but still provides a maximum environmental benefit. So here's just an idea where we fit under the USDA umbrella. We're all the way there on the bottom left under farm production and conservation. And if I could make one takeaway point from the first half of this presentation, I think the most important thing would be that unlike many other USDA agencies, we are not regulatory. All of our programs are voluntary, and all of the conservation work that we do is done in voluntary cooperation with farmers and ranchers, or as I may call throughout the presentation, agricultural producers. So what do? We generate data, we generate technology, and we issue conservation standards that help our partners and other policymakers make conservation decisions that are backed by science. Again, we work voluntarily with producers and communities, and through that process, we help address climate change and ensure the long-term sustainability of American agriculture. And to really distill that down, what that means is that we develop and we support and we can help pay for implementing conservation practices, again, on working lands. And then we also provide technical assistance and funding for many other types of conservation work, such as conservation easements and through emergency programs such as our emergency watershed protection program. So to do all of this, we need a team of experts and science-based environmental professionals. So I want to take just a moment to highlight some of the technical experts we have, and I'm going to run through it pretty quickly in the interest of time and so that we have questions at the end. So we were known originally as a soil conservation service, and although we've expanded our natural resource focus into from soil to water and air quality and energy, we continue to focus on soil conservation by promoting an understanding of soil and soil health to the public. So we have a team of soil scientists that have mapped soils across the United States and made that data available in a database called Web Soil Survey, which is accessible to you for free online. And you can dial in with your specific location and find out information about the kind of soil type you have and the sort of conditions that are in place, such as available water capacity and pH. We also have specialists in fields such as agronomy and plant genomics that work in our plant materials program. We've got one of these centers down in the Tucson area, and they work to produce seed stock, including from native plant species that is focused on improving the conservation of those species. They also work on priorities such as enhancement of pollinator and critical wildlife habitat. And they test cover crops and other crop species for adaptability to the local climate zone. So as you can imagine, in the Tucson Plant Material Center, there is a lot of testing going on of drought resistant and heat tolerant species for ag use here in the state. We have tech experts in snow survey. Our hydrologists manage a comprehensive network of snowpack monitoring sites across the Western United States. And they use those sites to forecast the runoff that will occur when the snowpack melts. And of course, all of that precipitation data that's provided is used to make decisions relating to ag production, fish and wildlife management, energy production, flood control, and so on. So one of the reasons why I highlighted that sort of wide range of experts is that because all of those positions and many more here at our agency, they provide the data and the technical resources that our customer-facing personnel, our field personnel, use to help farmers and ranchers. So our primary customer-facing personnel are our soil conservationists and our engineers. And our soil conservationists engage in conservation planning with farmers and ranchers, looking for ways to improve conservation efforts or get conservation practices onto their land. And of course, our engineers provide the needed help with designing the infrastructure to do that. So that brings me to our programs. All of the following conservation programs have varying eligibility requirements, but all provide assistance, whether technical or financial, to the participants. So I've included the USDA program links in the slides. So when these are posted after the presentation, you should be able to download the slides and click directly on them. And again, hopefully you've got my email and telephone number, and you can just reach out directly to me, and I will be happy to connect you with a local expert to talk to you about your farm. So a high cut of our programs, we've got our agricultural conservation easement program. That is for placing easements on land. And just a quick definition of an easement, and that is to place a long-term restriction on the type of land use that is allowed for that land. So we may keep that land as ag land, protect wetlands, or in some cases, protect historical or archaeological sites. We also have the Conservation Innovation Grants Program, which is a direct program to support new innovative ag practices. Of our conservation stewardship program, which is one mechanism that we use to provide technical assistance and funding directly to farmers and ranchers in the form of long-term contracts to do things to enhance the conservation on their land. I mentioned the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. That is how we get disaster services to communities after a natural disaster strikes. And we do that in coordination with a unit of local government. And then we also have our regional conservation partnership program. And we would partner with an entity in this case to look at natural resource challenges on ag land from a regional scale. And then those partners would work to make payments directly to participating farmers and ranchers. All right, so I think I saved enough time for me to get to the real meat of the presentation here. This is our environmental quality incentives program. We call that EQIP for short. And I wanted to spend the bulk of the presentation today on this because this is by far the most popular NRCS program in Arizona. And it's utilized heavily by beginning farmers and ranchers, urban farmers, and so on across the state. So we will have a session devoted to getting into the weeds of this EQIP program later in the series, but I did want to give you some highlights and answer some common questions that we receive on it. So EQIP, again, provides that direct technical assistance from our soil conservationists and our engineers. It also has some financial assistance available to pay for conservation practices. And what this program is for is to address natural resource concerns and deliver environmental benefits. And you can see them on the screen. It's things like improved water and air quality, increased soil health, reducing erosion, drought mitigation, and so on. So what we do through this program is we provide one-on-one help, and we visit the farm with you or the ranch with you, and we talk about your resource concerns, and we look at mitigating those resource concerns with conservation practices, which are also known as improvements. We come up with a conservation plan that meets your goal and your vision for your property. So if you have flood irrigation and you want to convert to sprinkler, or if you want to put in a high tunnel, you need a micro irrigation system. There's a number of practices that you may have on your wish list for your agricultural operation, and we'll come out and we'll work out a plan to get there and a cost estimate for what we think that might cost based on our payment schedule that we publish annually. We have about 200 unique practices that are designed for working farms, ranches, and forests. And then, of course, we have a process for applying for financial assistance to cover those improvements. Just a highlight of some of the conservation practices I mentioned: high tunnels, we have drip irrigation, mulching, cover crops. We can help you add pollinator and wildlife habitats to your land to attract beneficial insects for pollinating your crops. We also have a multitude of practices that cover rangeland and forest land management. Eligibility is a big topic, so I'd like to spend a moment on that. Essentially, if you own or rent agricultural land, you should be eligible. EQIP assistance can be used on all types of agricultural operations. It's good for conventional, organic, forestry and wildlife, urban farms, livestock operations. The specifics of eligibility, however, are not determined by an NRCS employee. We work with a sister agency under the USDA umbrella, the Farm Service Agency. And if you're interested in applying for program assistance from NRCS, you would first need to stop over at your local FSA office, which is typically, but not always, co-located in a service center with NRCS. And you would submit some paperwork there and ask for an eligibility determination for a program. And while that process is occurring, you would meet with our soil conservationists in our field office to start working on your conservation plan. And you can apply, of course, to your local service center. You can find it there on the screen at farmers.gov service locator. I'm going to skip this so that I can talk about some specific questions while we still have some time, although I do want to point out that USDA programs in the 2018 Farm Bill was addressed the specific and unique circumstances of historically underserved producers. And these are groups of producers that may have been subject to historically to discrimination and access to USDA programs and federal programs. So there are some special considerations that are available in our programs and for the EQIP program that includes increased payment rates and advanced payments to producers that are in the categories of beginning, limited resource, socially disadvantaged, and military veterans. So be sure to ask your planner about that when you are in an NRCS field office. All right, so just got 3 slides, I think, and then we can get to the questions. These EQIP mythbusters, these come up commonly when I'm interacting with the public and with farmers. If you search the internet for NRCS EQIP, you may find a lot of misinformation on our flagship program. And some of that information has always been incorrect, and some of it may have been correct at one point under a previous Farm Bill, but under the 2018 Farm Bill, that information has been updated and is no longer valid. So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip the animation on this and just run through the first screen here. We hear that there's a minimum of 1,000 in annual sales required in order to qualify as a producer for EQIP. That is false. Same thing with the minimum operation size or the location of an operation. Additionally, the type of an operation, like I'm organic and I don't qualify, all of those specific considerations, income, profit, or loss, the size of your operation, the location of it, and the type of operation is actually specifically prohibited under EQIP policy for determining if a producer or a farmer, rancher, forest landowner is eligible for this program. Another question we hear about production, I can't grow in raised beds. Actually, that's false. We do have raised beds as an allowed conservation practice, although we do have some restrictions, like we want them to be in contact with the natural soil profile. We receive a number of questions about irrigation history. For example, that you have to have irrigation history to participate in an NRCS program. That's partially false. We only ask for that if in your conservation plan, you are looking for funding to apply planned conservation practices that are irrigation related. And then there is a number of ways that irrigation history can be provided, which leads me into my last question here, which is that watering with a hose, bucket, or by hand does not count as irrigation history. That's actually false. We're here to help people improve their agricultural systems. So, if you've been struggling for a couple of seasons, you've already been qualified for the EQIP program through Farm Service Agency, and you've been struggling for a couple of seasons to get the right amount of water onto your crops. You've been struggling with your plant productivity and health. If you've got a history there of irrigation, even if it's with a hose or a bucket or by hand, that can qualify you for that irrigation history question there. All right, so I think that was it. And got one more slide. So one more question is that you have to own the land. That is false. You just have to have land control, a deed, a lease, a grazing permit, and there's other types of proof may be requested by the Farm Service Agency during that eligibility determination. And then we often hear from farmers that EQIP is a grant, which implies that we just hand the money over and then you do with it what you will, but it's actually a cost sharing contract and there are terms and conditions. If you're selected for funding, we enter into a contract and that has a schedule for implementing those practices. And like any contract, there's terms and conditions. And then there's the official EQIP page. And folks, I'm sorry I had to run through that so quickly, but I want to make sure that we have time to get to all of Ed's questions and any that may have come in for me. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Colleen. And thank you. And I'm looking forward to NRCS participating in future episodes of this series and getting a little more into the weeds with our programs.
Thank you so much, Paul. And I will drop in the chat our program webpage where you can subscribe to the newsletter and get access to all of the Eventbrite invitations for future events. We did have a question for you, Paul, from Rodney in the chat. Do you have any experts at NRCS who can help determine what farming is permissible to happen on a land with power line easements and or gas line easements?
Absolutely. So if you're working with a local field office expert, that would be something that would fall initially with a conversation with the soil conservationist. But if that soil conservationist needs additional expertise, we have a state office personnel across multiple disciplines that they can reach out to for in-depth assistance on something like that. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself. I'm going to remove the spotlight so we can really connect as a group and see if we have any questions. You can drop it in the chat and I'll ask, or unmute yourself and please feel free to ask questions for Paul, for Ed. Okay, I'm not
Hi,
seeing.
Colin.
Oh, there we go. Great. Hi,
Hi,
Rob.
this is Rodney. This is a question for Ed on the issue of drip lines. So I noticed some of the presentation he had, obviously beds that were, I think, had a 50-foot run or so. Wanted to hear what his feedback was on. Certain drip lines would say, oh yeah, you could do this for 400 feet or so. You know, has he in his work seen maybe like a sweet spot? Some people do 50-foot beds, 100-foot beds. Any recommendation you may have for us?
Yeah, Rodney, the challenge there is usually the pressure, right? I've seen people run 400 feet and I've seen people run 600 feet and 50. There is no sweet spot. It depends on the pressure. I've had folks say, yeah, you can run it for 400 feet. And yeah, I guess you can. But the best thing to do is figure out what's the pressure loss. And it's an easy calculation for a 400 foot going through a 1/2 inch, piece of drip tape. What your pressure drop's going to be. Some of the drip tape has pressure compensating emitters on it, so it doesn't matter how much pressure they have, but some of it doesn't. And so I have seen people at 400, 600 feet complain that the drip tape they put in when they get to the last 100 feet isn't putting out the right amount of water. So you do have to think about that. Well, how much pressure do you have at the top and how much pressure you're going to have at the bottom? So there is no real sweet spot. Obviously, the shorter ones you have no issues with, but shorter ones means you're turning your tractor around a lot. You got really small beds, all of that. Sometimes it's nice to have nice long beds, and some drip can go 400 feet. And so it's definitely possible. Check to see how much pressure we've got at the top of the line, and we can work out together figuring out what that pressure drop is over 400 feet. And then once again, Rodney, it's not only 400 feet that way, but then how far are you going from the pump, right? And so it's that back end of the field. That's the one you're really worried about, right? By the time you get all the way back there, your 35 PSI is dropped to 15 and you're in trouble. So, but shorter is always better, but not necessarily. They can go far.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Colleen, there is a question in the chat that I'd like to take it if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
I see. Catherine Jennings asked, does EQIP eligibility require ag zoning, or would other zoning, example, rural homestead, also qualify? And Catherine, I'm really glad that you brought this up, because as a federal agency, we don't specifically determine the local zoning needs when a participant is working with our EQIP program. So we always caution the participant that you're responsible to make sure that you're in compliance with the local zoning, because we don't specifically check that. We put that responsibility on the participant. And I can tell you that working as a conservation planner in a field office, which I did for some time before I was the outreach coordinator, we've placed high tunnels in backyards, and we've done raised beds in backyards, and I've worked on what you would consider traditional rural ag land, and all kinds of different zoning requirements. And in each case, it's been on the participant to make sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's there, because we want to make sure that they answer those questions before they enter into a contract with us, because the worst thing that would happen, of course, would be for them to contract to do a high tunnel. And then, for example, the city of Phoenix came along and said, you need to have a permit for that first. We don't run into a lot of issues with that. But one issue where it may require particular sensitivity in an urban setting is with your homeowners association. Because as you know, in Arizona, HOAs have a lot of power, and they often have a lot of restrictions. So when we're working in an urban environment, we always make sure we have that conversation with the customer. So thanks for that great question and for letting me have that long-winded response.
Thank you, Paul. And I see that Emily has her hand raised.
Hello. Hi there. Here's my questions for Ed about the variability of quality when it comes to drip tape. It sort of is perhaps an assumption that the thinner of the material will be shorter lasting, especially if it's not buried, and that the thicker material will last longer, will last perhaps multiple seasons, and that to make it affordable, you buy the material that's kind of right in the middle. But my question for Ed is, I would love to know if you have been conducting research on this drip tape material. There's really a lot of variability in quality, and this stuff is pretty expensive. And I would like to know if there's additional information that you might provide to us to help us when we're purchasing, other than trying to make the tape last as long as possible if it's surface applied, and if there are particular, in other words, Rodney asked about a sweet spot for length of the run of the
Right.
tape. I want to know if there's a sweet spot about the type of material that makes the most sense for our environment here in the low desert.
So Emily, I wish I had the information for you. I don't. I do know that we've had drip tape that's been buried, that's been out there for 15 years plus. You know, but I also know that the surface tape is very much subjected to the sunlight, and it does degrade faster if it's thinner. There's no doubt. It also, obviously, thinner tape will be more susceptible to nicks as you're going through and hoeing and doing different things. So I don't have any data myself. We could look into it. Colleen, maybe that's something we can look. Someone maybe somewhere has done something on that, but I personally have not looked into the longevity of surface drip tape. And, you know, and you're right, it is different, folks, and be very careful when you're out there buying it and you're buying connectors and stuff. Make sure you understand exactly what the thickness is and it's the right company, et cetera, because I know that sometimes rain drip does not work with, you know, Toro, and those connectors don't work together because Emily's right. Those thicknesses of the tape, they're all 1/2 inch. They all have a little different thickness to it, and that makes a huge difference in what type of connectors will work with it. So, but sorry, Emily, no, I don't have any information on that.
Oh, thanks anyway, though.
Good
I would love
question,
to
though.
see further studies on that, and just it's like a shared applied practice would be super.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see that
Julie.
Laura has a question. Laura, if you want to unmute yourself, and we'll have this be our last question for now, but please feel free to follow up and email me with follow-up questions. I'll drop my email in the chat.
Okay, thank you, first of all, to everybody for your questions that were really good and your time. I appreciate it very much. Again, my name is Laura. My question is, I think it's geared to Mr. Cattelino. You mentioned that there were some places that do testing of the seeds and water use and things like that. I do know where I can go to get my soil tested and stuff like that. But if that's volunteer basis where they're testing like the seeds and the water conservation and stuff like that, where is that located, or can I find that information online? Let's say if I wanted more information on that, or if I wanted to volunteer, like who do I contact regarding that information?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that question. So I think I'm pulling 2 questions out of that. So we have the plant materials program, and we have a plant materials center in Tucson where they are conducting research on the multiple items that I mentioned in the presentation. I'm not sure if they accept volunteers, but we do have a volunteer program. You can reach out directly to me, and I can connect you with the state office administrator here. Her name is Kate Stockton, and I will connect you with her so you can find out about volunteering at any of the NRCS facilities in the state. Are you looking also specifically for information about testing for your own operation, or did I get the second part of that wrong?
I'm a veteran, so I'm part of the VA EAP. I don't know if you know about that practice that's going on and stuff like that. And then they sent us to California for a week where we can find out how to test our soil ourselves, pH levels, all that other good stuff. So I do know that I can go to Arizona, the college, and get my soil tested there. But I'm just thinking like in terms of heirloom seeds versus, you know, like what I can do every year. And then I know that they're working on seeds that require less water. Since I'm in Queen Creek and I have a well, I'm always looking for ways to save water or to conserve water. So I wanted to know if there was any place that I can go to actually either volunteer or find that information more hands-on.
So I think there would be an opportunity for you to volunteer with NRCS, but as far as any other organizations, I'm not sure. And I'm not sure if Extension has a volunteer program that would fit that. I don't know, Colleen, or Iman, if there's a volunteer program place in place with cooperative extension?
We do have the Master Gardener program. I dropped their information in the chat, and they would be a horticulture course that you would take and followed with volunteering. And I think it's a great overview of different horticultural skills that are very relevant to agriculture in general, and it crosses a broad array of topics. So like I said, you would take the course and you would then be a Master Gardener volunteer and complete volunteer hours as a part of the program. And it would be a really holistic curriculum. I'm not specific to one area or the other.
And I think that
Okay.
would be a really good option for you. Is it's more structured and more specific than what we have currently for volunteers within the NRCS structure.
And Laura,
Okay.
I dropped that information in the chat. I will also reach out and share it again. I wanted to just take this time now to thank everyone. We went a little
Thank
bit,
you.
so I appreciate everyone's time today. I'm going to share a QR code for the survey that I dropped in the chat. So if you prefer this method, we'd really appreciate it if you could take our survey to help inform future events, and we would love to hear from you. Our next Urban Ag Hour will be February 22nd, and we hope to see you all there. More information coming your way soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and
Thank
thank you,
you.
Colleen, and thank you.